Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
I'm ready.
Awesome. Today, we're getting into some serious golf swing mechanics,
Mm-hmm.
and specifically tackling these terms that seem to cause endless debate
Right.
across the line and laid off.
Yeah. A lot of confusion around those.
Definitely a lot of confusion. And luckily, you guys sent us some incredible material to unpack.
Oh, yeah.
This expert discussion from a golf instruction platform using something called Sportsbox.
Sportsbox.
It's a motion capture system, so
So cool.
it's basically like X-ray vision for pro swings. We get to see what's really happening.
Yeah, you can see so much more detail with a system like that.
Exactly. And that's what makes this deep dive so exciting.
Definitely.
We're going to figure out what these terms truly mean. Like, is across the line always this big no-no that some people say?
Right.
Can your swing look across the line from certain angles but actually be laid off?
Yeah, that's where it gets really interesting.
And most importantly, what does all this mean for our own swings out there on the course?
Yeah, that's the key takeaway here.
Absolutely. So, first things first, let's get those definitions crystal clear.
Okay, so picture this. You have a line from your golf ball straight to the target.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at the top of your backswing,
Right.
if your club shaft is pointing to the right of that line, for a right-handed golfer, of course,
Right.
we call that across the line.
Okay. Makes sense.
And if it's pointing left of the target line,
Mm-hmm.
that's laid off.
So it all boils down to the club shaft's position at the very top.
Relative to that target line, yeah.
Gotcha. Now, I noticed in the material they kept mentioning these terms, hand thrust and club hand gap.
Uh-huh.
To be honest, those went a little over my head.
Yeah, this could be a little jargony.
A little bit, yeah. Can you break those down for us?
Sure, so think of hand thrust as how much your hands move
Okay.
forward or back during the swing.
So, like if my hands are way out in front at the top.
That'd be a lot of forward hand thrust, yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. And club hand gap is basically the distance between the club head and the middle of your hands.
Okay.
It helps us understand if the club head is leading or lagging behind.
So those measurements help paint a more detailed picture.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. Now, speaking of hands, they kept bringing up Rory McIlroy
Oh, yeah.
as an example of someone whose swing looks across the line,
Right.
but the data says he's actually laid off.
It's fascinating.
What's going on there?
So Rory's been working on making his swing less deep, basically reducing how far his hands move back during the backswing.
Interesting. So even back when he was ranked #1 in 2012, he was already a bit laid off.
According to the data, yeah.
I always thought he looked pretty across the line back then.
That's where those camera angles can fool you.
Ah, gotcha.
The data showed his club head was slightly behind his hands in 2012.
Mm-hmm.
But then, as he made his swing less deep,
Right.
his hands moved further back, which made it look more across the line. But the data still showed that his club was actually laid off, just not quite as much.
So even though it looked more to the right, it was still slightly laid off.
Exactly.
Mind-blowing.
It really shows that what you see isn't always the whole picture.
Right.
Those camera angles, especially down the line, they can create some optical illusions.
So even those online swing analysis videos
Especially those.
could be totally misleading.
Yep. That's why data like Sportsbox is so valuable.
Makes sense.
It helps cut through the visual noise.
So we can't just look at a swing and make assumptions.
Nope. There's often more to the story.
This is making me rethink everything. So if we can't always trust our eyes,
Mm-hmm.
how do we figure out what's really going on in our own swings?
That's the million-dollar question.
And yeah, what can we actually do about it?
That's where those different swing styles come in.
Oh, right. They analyzed all those different golfers.
Yep, like John Rahm, Adam Scott, Xander Schauffele.
Right, and they actually categorize them based on their swings. Okay, now I'm really curious. Tell me more about these categories.
So they talk about these under golfers and on top golfers,
Okay.
which comes from swing archetype testing by these guys, Mike Adams and Terry Rawls.
Right, right.
And under golfers tend to have a flatter shaft angle at the top,
Mm-hmm.
and their hands are kind of more in front of their chest.
So someone like Ron with that super flat backswing,
Exactly.
classic laid-off look.
He'd be considered an under golfer.
Okay, that makes sense.
On the other side, you have those on top golfers.
Right.
They tend to have deeper hands.
Deeper hands. Okay.
And their elbows travel further behind them,
Okay.
which often gives them that, across the line look, at least from some angles.
Right, right. So like someone with a deep hand path and a lot of wrist extension, like Shane Lowry,
Got it.
he'd be on top.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
Okay.
We were talking about how Lowry's chest, it's pretty thick,
Right, right.
which actually limits how deep his hands can go.
Right. So even though he's got some of those on-top characteristics,
Yeah.
he still ends up kind of laid off.
Exactly.
It's like these categories are starting points.
Yeah, good way to think about it.
But then everyone's body is different.
Everyone's unique.
And that creates all these variations.
Exactly. That's why it's so important to understand your own tendencies.
Right, how your body affects your swing.
There's no one size fits all.
Definitely not. Okay, I'm starting to get these categories.
Great.
But there's got to be more to it, right?
Oh, absolutely.
It's not just about that one position at the top.
Yep.
It's how everything moves together.
You're thinking like a pro now.
Uh-huh.
The real key is the timing and sequencing of the whole thing.
That makes sense. So
Oh,
like
yeah.
Zach Johnson.
Ah, Zach Johnson. Interesting case.
He's got that flat backswing, so under golfer.
He does have that flatter shaft angle,
Mm-hmm.
but he also has a really strong left-hand grip.
Right, right.
Creates some wrist extension.
Oh, so even someone as consistent as Zach Johnson doesn't fit neatly into one box.
It proves you can find success with different styles.
For sure. Okay, what about Hideki Matsuyama?
Oh, Matsuyama, his swing's beautiful.
So fluid.
He illustrates the importance of the spine.
His spine.
Yeah, he maintains his posture throughout the swing,
Right.
which lets his arms swing freely.
Okay, I
A
see.
lot of amateurs, they tend to straighten up
Ooh, guilty.
or even lift their chest as they go back.
Yeah, I've definitely done that.
But what happens is, instead of rotating around their spine,
Right.
they end up lifting the club with their back.
That's not good.
Matsuyama keeps that forward bend,
Mm-hmm.
uses his spine as the axis of rotation.
So it's like his spine's the anchor,
Perfect analogy.
and everything else moves around it.
Exactly.
Okay, this is making a lot of sense.
Good. Now, speaking of different styles, Bryson DeChambeau.
Oh, yeah, Bryson.
He takes that on top thing to another level.
He's definitely not afraid to experiment.
He's so flexible
Mm-hmm.
and has incredible body control.
Hmm.
His hands get super deep. Yeah, it's pretty extreme.
Elbows way behind him. Club gets super across the line.
But he can handle it.
Yeah, because he's strong and flexible.
Right.
He can still deliver the club consistently.
So his swing might look unconventional,
Yeah.
but it works for him.
It just proves there are many ways to swing effectively.
Right.
What matters is finding what works best for you.
I'm seeing a theme here. Individuality is key.
You're getting it.
No single right way to swing.
Exactly. Now let's shift gears a bit.
Okay.
Talk about the transition from backswing to downswing.
The transition. Okay.
One of the experts brought up a great question about the club head movement during that transition.
Yeah, they were talking about whether the club head always has to move further behind the hands.
Right as you start down.
I've heard a lot about that lag feeling.
Yeah, it's a common element,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not an absolute rule.
Oh, really?
A lot of golfers do have that increase in club hand gap as they start down,
Right.
but others might transition differently and still generate plenty of power. So I shouldn't freak out if I don't feel that distinct lag?
Exactly.
Yeah.
What matters most is smooth and efficient energy transfer.
From your body to the club.
Yep.
Right.
If you're trying to force lag
Right.
or manipulate your swing to feel something specific,
Yeah, that never ends well.
you're probably going to cause more problems.
Then you solve.
Exactly. Again, it comes back to individuality.
What works for one might not work for another.
Exactly. To illustrate this even further,
Okay.
let's look at two of the biggest hitters,
Okay, who are we talking about?
Rory McIlroy and Dustin Johnson.
Oh, this is going to be good.
They have very different transitions.
Okay.
Rory, with his deeper hand path,
Okay.
he has a lot of inward rotation of his right elbow as he starts down.
Inward rotation.
It's like he's slingshotting the club.
Oh, wow.
Dustin, on the other hand,
Okay.
has more of an outward pushing motion with his right elbow.
Outward pushing. Okay.
So two totally different approaches.
Both super effective.
And again, it just reinforces that idea.
That there's no single right way to
Exactly.
generate power.
Now, before we wrap up, one last point.
Okay, hit me.
From the material, the relationship between chest movement and getting across the line.
Chest movement.
Oh.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
One expert noted that golfers who straighten their chest during the transition,
Running the transition. Okay.
they often end up across the line.
Yeah, that actually makes sense.
Right. If you're standing up as you start down,
You're changing the club path.
exactly. As your chest straightens, it shifts your center of gravity,
Mm-hmm.
throws off the timing,
Makes sense.
and that can lead to that dreaded out-to-in swing path.
And that across the line look.
Exactly.
So stable chest is key.
Absolutely.
You gotta stay in your posture.
Let your arms swing freely.
Resist the urge to lift with your back.
You got it.
Hmm.
Now, Let's recap what we've learned.
Yeah, I'm ready for a recap. This has been a lot to process,
It has.
but I think I'm starting to see the light. All right, let's sum this all up.
Yeah, where do we even begin?
So we started by trying to define these terms.
Across the line and laid off.
Right, and realizing they're not these absolutes.
More like relative concepts.
Yeah, it all depends on the golfer.
And we learned that those TV angles,
Oh,
they
man.
can be so deceiving.
What looks across the line might actually be,
Perfectly fine.
or even a little laid off.
It's crazy. Then we explored those under golfer and on top golfer categories.
Right, but they're just starting points.
Exactly. Everyone's unique.
And we talked about how your physical build
Flexibility, chest structure, all that.
plays a huge role.
Huge role, yeah.
And maybe the most important takeaway
I think so.
is that good timing and sequencing
That's the key.
is way more important than
Like getting a specific look.
at the top of your swing.
It's about how it all works together.
So find what works best for you.
That's the name of the game.
You know what really stood out to me?
What's that?
Even the pros. They're always tweaking their swings.
Constantly evolving.
Like Rory.
Rory's a great example.
Even when he was #1, he was still working on things.
Shows that there's always room for improvement.
No matter your skill level.
Exactly.
So we got to keep learning, keep experimenting.
Absolutely.
Now, before we let everyone go practice,
Yeah.
give us one final thought to chew on.
Okay, think about this.
Right?
Does getting across the line
Mm-hmm.
actually cause the problems you think it does?
Ooh, now that's a good one.
Right.
Making me question everything.
So they touched on this briefly.
Okay.
One expert said that for some golfers,
Yeah.
across the line is just a symptom.
A symptom of what?
Other issues in their swing,
Like what?
early extension, swaying off the ball.
Oh, so those things that throw off your balance.
Exactly.
I mean-
So maybe instead of obsessing over the club position,
Right.
the key is to fix those underlying issues.
And maybe the cross the line thing just disappears.
Might just fix itself.
That's a whole different way of thinking about it.
It's like a doctor treating the cause, not just the symptom.
That's a great analogy.
So don't just obsess over positions.
Understand the why behind it all.
Exactly.
Wow, this has given me a lot to think about.
Okay.
I'm ready to hit the range
But that's what we like to hear.
and experiment with some of these ideas.
Perfect.
This was a fantastic deep dive.
Glad you enjoyed it.
Learned so much, thank you.
You're very welcome.
And to everyone listening, remember,
Mm-hmm.
there's no one right way to swing.
Find what works for you
Enjoy the process.
and keep learning.
Until next time, happy golfing, everyone.
Happy golfing.